Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Two Grumpy Old Men. My name is Rich Carling, and my partner in crime is.
Tim Bagwell. Rich, what are we talking about today?
Well, Tim, I thought we'd talk about the Republican Party's attempt, Donald Trump's attempts to destroy
Okay.
free speech, okay, and also their attempts to destroy the Democratic Party. Hey, even their attempts to try to destroy comedy, of all things, and whatever miscellaneous complaints we happen to have. All
Yes.
right. So let's get, here's the thing that I'm finding interesting is that there is all kinds of disinformation. There is they're discrediting things, and a lot of it surrounding the death of Charlie Kirk. Okay, who was killed, and quite honestly, in my opinion, he. Okay, I look at this whole thing and I think to myself, it's something we've been seeing quite a bit of, within the Republican Party, within the radical conservatives out there. By the way, just a little sideline here. I had written a Facebook post about this, about the word right, Right, which implies correctness, which implies honesty, which and that it makes it seem like everything's all right.
They're
Which is
valid
why
words.
I don't want to be calling the Republican Party the right wing of politics. And that because to me it implies that they're correct and they're not by any means. What's your take on that, Tim?
Well, I agree with you. It's not the. I remember, when I was growing up, hearing the right wing, and it's like, what? Why is there? Oh, you understand. There's a right wing and there's a left wing as we fly through
Yeah,
democracy.
really, with each of our hands and all that. Yeah.
And you need both in order to, fly right. Otherwise, you're going to fly this way or that way. But that was a time when supposedly it was more balanced. There was a more of a commitment to democracy. There was more of a commitment to fair elections. People like our Senator Dirksen, Republican. Senator
Hmm.
Dirksen
Good
was a
senator.
sponsor. I believe a sponsor. He was a major proponent of the Voting Rights Act because he thought that perhaps not enough Republican voters were voting. They weren't exercising their right because of restrictions that kept other people out too, especially African Americans. But Dirksen was behind that. There was a balance. We saw a balance of more of a balance, but then with Reagan, things go out of balance while he's acting like we're all okay. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And with every challenge, the presidency and the imperial presidency has been talked about. I forget the author, the original author on imperial presidency, but it's just been an imperial. No president likes to give up power. No president likes to give up power, but we've gone off the deep end. We've gone off the deep end with Trump and the Supreme Court enabling him. So, yeah, he thinks he can do anything he wants, and that's the biggest part of the problem.
Yep. Well, go back a little bit on something you said a little bit, a little bit earlier in that statement, in that the Dirksen, that was back in the days when really the only difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party was the how we were going to get to a similar end point.
Right.
Okay, we just came in at it from two different directions. Today, it doesn't seem like either one of us have the same end point in mind. And that the Republican Party's got this one direction they want to go in, and it involves, authoritarianism. Taking, basically they're trying to take the country over and make all of us do their bidding. They've spent since Reagan, they have spent all these decades trying to convince people. Um, well, I think at one time before Reagan, let me back up here a little bit. Before Reagan, they always
Yeah.
tried to convince people of the righteousness of their argument. After Reagan, they basically gave up on doing that because nobody was buying what they were selling.
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
and yeah,
well,
and so now they figure they'll force that on us.
right. Well, yeah, going back, echoing back what you were saying about Reagan, you also had around that time Newt Gingrich, and then one of the advisors, who's I think was it Atwood, that just developed a program of name calling and undermining and getting away from the issues of policy, but getting to the issues of what they consider to be character or behavior when they themselves were, you know, uh, you know,
Oh, yeah, it was a sophomoric argument.
the simple thing is hypocrites. Arthur Schlesinger, by the way, was the author of the Imperial Presidency. Just want to put that out there. I threw the name of the book out there, but yeah, and that was a long time ago. He foresaw this happening where the more and more power, and then this whole unitary theory that developed, unitary executive, which I think is the tech bros love that because they think they created the world with their tech, and not realizing that you know Facebook is a good place to meet with friends and relatives.
Hmm. Yeah,
Is what it's going to come down to eventually. The and Amazon is great for ordering stuff, but that's not. They should not be as politically involved as they are, and under the
yeah,
leash of the dictatorship, which when the man orders the FCC chair to threaten the broadcasters, boom, Jimmy Kimmel's out. You
yep,
know,
yep,
yeah, and
yep.
yeah, and perhaps next Seth Meyers, and then who's below Seth? Forget it. There's another one
Well,
out there, and then
you
there's
see
John
the
Stewart.
yeah, and then you and what you're seeing is a bunch of cowards. ABC, CBS,
Howard's all
and that Disney. I mean, when you get down to it, CBS is owned by Paramount. Okay, and now that they have these deals, or they've got deals in the works that require government approval. And
right.
so what they're all looking at is the almighty dollar, and screw everybody else,
Yeah.
and that. And so
Who's
and
that?
mind you,
Who's that who I
we
have to
knew.
kiss?
I'm sorry.
Who's that who I have to kiss is the corporate
Yeah,
motto. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that it's just crazy. And so some of the stuff too here. Just so everybody, kind of understands, I put together a list. Okay, I mean, did some research, put together a list because I kind of want to, because there's so much stuff going on that it's hard to keep track of all of it, and everything, and what
Right
it
there.
is that's got to be fought here, and that. So give you an idea. This is stuff from Project 2025, by the way, and that, and one of the things I realized, and I was talking with my wife about the other day, is the fact that that document wasn't supposed to come out. Somebody and this is one of the best known things in Washington D.C. is that you can never keep a secret.
Yeah.
In D.C. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That and so Project 2025 was not supposed to come out, but it did. And then I think they tried to whitewash it a little bit, and all that. And so the
Right.
public document that they put on, that the Heritage Foundation put on their website, has basically been sanitized,
Yep.
and the real document is elsewhere. But none of it is in favor of the working person out there whatsoever. The middle class is getting screwed big time on this, and
Well,
and that
they have
and
I'll just say an evil agenda to remake America in the version of the white Christian nationalists. And I mean, offend some people, maybe even you. The white culture kind of like has it's on its death throes. The white culture that used to produce folk music. They still produce country music, but that's changed quite a bit. But where's their comedy? You know, it's comedy has traditionally been you know an Irish and Jewish thing in America, and that's a great thing. Black comedy too. There's all these groups, subgroups that produce things into the culture, but a great bit of white culture, stop producing their own stuff. There's no great novels. There's no I'm sure there's data to indicate, some progress, and certainly they still have a claim on country music. But there's I think they have a feeling of being left out. This is what they don't realize they've been exploited, and they don't understand how to revive their culture without hurting other people. You know, they want to they seek to put the Ten Commandments in schools. They get pushback, fortunately, so far. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
that's a joke.
yeah. So I don't want to monopolize it here, but yeah, there's
Oh no,
that, and they've been exploited. They've been exploited by the Republicans,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and just
All
enough.
those fears,
Yeah, and the
it,
Republicans as you pointed out in your memo that you sent, they want to change. They want to change election laws to just have their people have the right enough margin to win congressional races now.
yeah, yeah. Well, you have
So
to
they
keep in
retain.
mind, that those who wrote up Project 2025 realized one thing: they had a very limited amount of time in which to enact everything
Right.
that they had in there, and that's why they're going so quickly, with it,
Yeah.
and that and everything. And they knew basically 2 years, because they know that the people in the United States, once they realize exactly what it is that these guys are doing, because they're not telling the people what it is they're doing, they've
Uh-huh.
they've come out with sanitized language that make it sound like, oh, this is such a wonderful thing, and they're not understanding the reality of what's really going on there. The reality is that they want to make it difficult for people to vote.
Right.
Even by the way, for their own. These folks have a tendency to eat their own.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at that. When you send in, well, let's put it this way. I think to a certain extent, Charlie Kirk might have been getting too big for his britches. And so what happens? You send somebody in to assassinate him, basically. And what you send in is one of your own. So you got one of your own assassinating one of your own, so that you can make a big deal out of it, and bingo, you know,
This is
and that,
my
and
friend,
so
our friend
and
Steve Roderick.
and I may get into some trouble for that.
Well, this was back in the Nazi era. Back in the Nazi era, before they took power, a Nazi propagandist, not Goebbels, but another one, because he's dead. He got killed early on. His name was Horst Wessel. Wessel, spelled with a W, sounds like vessel.
Yeah,
And
yeah, they
yeah,
pronounce it
he
like a
was
B. Yeah,
allegedly by communists, by members of the German Communist Party, and that was used as was one of their excuses. They used that assassination as a rallying point, and who knows if the Communist Party did it or not? Doesn't really matter. He was
that's who got blamed.
assassinated.
Yeah,
They got blamed, and that was used as a rallying point. May have been true, may have not been true, but they didn't care about truth. They just cared about the narrative, their narrative to undermine democracy and the Weimar Republic at the time, and to create the Nazi regime in months. In
yeah,
months, it just took months. And
yeah.
I'm hopeful that what we have, we're just a huge country, huge country. You shared with me last night when we were doing research the Turning Point's radical professor list, in
Mm-hmm.
which after I looked at it, did some analysis, did some copying down. There's I think the number was a little over 300 identified left wing professors. Okay, well in America, 300 professors is not a blip on the radar. Okay, yeah, I don't know
but the
what the hell's
mere
about
but the
it.
mere fact that they got a list,
Well,
and that
they got,
and
they got they got some prominent people who may or may not be professors, but they also have little professors that the scope of what they're doing is small. They cited one person, and this applies to what we're talking about: free speech, the First Amendment. She had a debate class, and she told people that certain topics were not to be covered. Well, sometimes when you want to maintain control of your classroom, you
yeah,
have to limit the topics in order to maintain that control. You may have 20 students; they all have to give a speech, or there may be a debate, and you can't you can't have all the time eaten up by on certain hot topics,
Right.
certain hot topics. So the which can go on forever. So they're and some may not be so hot. They just may be topics that go on and on and on, and so you don't want them to do that.
Exactly.
So they look for
Exactly.
anything. They're looking for self-reported. They're looking for people in the field reporting on these professors.
Yeah.
And then I threw some prominent people in there. They had Hillary in there. They had Noam Chomsky in there. Who else that was prominent? Oh, Al Sharpton was in there. And again,
Yeah.
I go,
Yeah.
Chomsky was definitely a professor, and uh, and um,
Well, Liz Cheney was in there. You know,
uh,
Liz
yeah,
Cheney was on the list.
he
Uh,
was.
um, who else did they have? Uh, Hillary. Hillary Clinton
Yes,
was in there, and I don't know for sure, but I don't think either one of them are teachers or professors. They might have gone and given a speech at a college. Yeah, I'm sure they've done
right,
that.
right.
Okay, and everything. And then of course you got to be bummed by the fact that we're not on the list. you know. But hey,
Indeed, and I've taught at 16 universities, so you think they would have hit me at some point.
yeah, really, really, it's like God. What do I have to do to get on this list?
From
and
a ideological
so
perspective,
so
supposedly.
yeah.
But I've had students on. I have told young Republican students what they need to do to get involved in politics. Okay, I have no idea whether or not they were MAGA at the time. This has been a few years back, but I gave counsel on. Okay, if you're interested, what you have to do is X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I had a student from Illinois who was with the Illinois Department of Corrections. And at the time, who was our governor before Pritzker?
Rauner,
No, no, huh?
Rauner.
Browner. Browner. Yeah, Browner. And I said, well, you're in the Department of Corrections. You may want to vote in the primary and pull a Republican ballot. Okay. Don't know what your position is, but if you want to get promoted in the Department of Corrections in Illinois under Browner, pull that, uh, pull that
Yeah,
Republican ballot. You know,
yeah.
yeah.
exactly,
Because
exactly.
he's a young guy at the Department of Corrections. I want
Yeah.
him to have a career. You know,
Oh yeah.
as a professor, I support him having a career, and he wanted advice, and that's the advice I gave him. I don't know what his politics actually were, but I think that was a reasonable way to get promoted at that time. You know, I wish I had. I wish I made a little note with who that was. So yeah, there's what they consider, and they have. Yes, they had a catalog of incidences. Incidences, not a pervasive. No, Chomsky's pretty pervasive, but in terms of the message that they sent out. Okay, but these were what I saw was mere instances of being reported, not necessarily a wide-ranging thing. Even if someone shows up for a demonstration, they may at that time felt that they were exercising their free speech rights at an event that the right wing considers the wrong wing, which is called the wrong wing.
Yeah, that's what we should call it, the wrong wing.
The
Exactly,
wrong,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, because they're not right
wrong,
about anything, that's for sure.
yeah.
yeah,
They,
that.
they disabled the right wing with the wrong wing, and now our bird is flying in circles.
Yep,
I,
yep.
I think that's what
And
happens.
the thing about it too is when it comes down to free speech, it's their speech only and not our speech. And if you're a believer in free speech, I mean there was if everybody remembers the movie The American President with Michael Douglas, and
Yeah.
that last scene in which he talks about basically what he's talking about is citizenship. What does it take to be a citizen of the United States of America? And it ain't easy, and it's not easy on purpose. But you have to be willing to accept. You have to be willing to accept the speech that somebody is saying that will could literally curdle your blood. It's something you would just disagree with vehemently, but that's okay because you've got the right to disagree vehemently with that person, without fear of retribution or anything like that. Now, apparently somebody can sit there and question, what the heck was going on with this Charlie Kirk, killing. I won't call it an assassination, because quite honestly, I don't. It's not really fitting the bill. and that, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
But the point is that you've got to you got people out here who are expressing a different viewpoint on this thing, and they're being punished, for it.
Yeah.
You got Jimmy Kimmel being punished. You got Stephen Colbert being punished. I'm waiting for for it to that to
Well,
fall on other people. But
well,
fortunately, we've got an out in a sense. Okay, and it's guys like you and me, all right, and other independent news sources that don't depend upon the government or we don't need a license from the government to do this. Okay,
right.
and all this, and more people are watching this because if you watch the regular news broadcasts, what was it? I think it's a CBS Sunday mornings
Yes.
program. Okay,
Yeah.
and once the whole Paramount deal came through, all of a
Yeah.
sudden, all of what they reported on changed, and it's all fluff.
Yeah.
There isn't any good things in there. And then wait till
Oh,
60 Minutes comes out. It'll be even worse.
well, almost all of the evening news is fluff. It's like nothing, and I think they just love it when there's a fire in California, a hurricane in Florida, or tornadoes in the Midwest, because then they don't have to report on Trump.
Right,
You know, right?
right,
Because that
yeah.
if it
But
bleeds,
they're
it
going to get
bleeds.
into trouble for reporting on disasters, and because it's going to come out the mere fact that FEMA
Yeah,
isn't in there doing what they're supposed to do,
exactly.
and that. And here's the thing too. By the way, that leads into an interesting thing. I think, that because as I'm looking at my notes here, we mentioned FEMA. Okay, and so what's going on there? Well, basically, what's happening is that Trump has been purging all of the career civil servants. These are people who have expertise in these areas, and it isn't just FEMA. It's the CDC, it's the NIH.
Mhm.
All of these scientific groups, that sit there and help to develop the things that keep us safe and healthy.
Right.
And these guys are literally, they're kicking them out of there, and they're installing these loyalists. Did you see that what they're going to do is how when we were younger we got the MMR vaccination, measles,
Right.
mumps, and rubella.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they added one more onto it about 10 years ago, and
MMR, another M.
yeah,
I think
okay, yeah, and so all of a sudden, so what happened is Robert Kennedy decides he's going to kick out off of this advisory board all of the scientists that were on there, people who had expertise in these areas, and that he puts in a bunch of loyalists, a bunch of anti-vaccinators, is what he did, and so now these people are sitting there going, well, you don't need these vaccines, and all
yeah,
that. They limit COVID, to people our age, for instance. But young
yeah.
people who can get COVID just as well as the rest of us, and are like, oh, no, you don't need to get it, and so you see measles, which was something I thought was conquered, a long time ago, and
Right,
that,
right.
but now it's running rampant, and
Yeah.
that and measles can kill people. A shot.
I think they're looking for the. I think they're working and in 2025 is kind of like this. The project is that they're looking for the apocalypse. They're in search of the apocalypse.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, they want to destroy. They basically want to destroy the system we have so that they can
yeah.
rebuild it into a system that works for them only. Like you were
Right,
saying, just for the whites only, and that is their
right.
last gasp at trying to hold on to something that doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah,
You
and
know, and that,
if they would just accept, and so many have. Here's the one of the things I find it. They're always talking about the white male vote, and they're like, yeah, but what about you and me and a number of other people doing stuff on YouTube like us that are old white guys? I don't know. We were boomers. We grew up in a certain era of politics, and we're liberals. We're left, if not far left. I'm far left, but
you know, yeah. But
yeah,
what's funny here, Tim, is the fact that everything I've got, I had to work for. Everything you've got, you had to work for,
yeah,
and all that. I don't have a problem with working with people of different colors, different ethnicities, different religions, and all that sort of stuff. When you go to work, you do your job, and then you
Yeah.
go home. Okay, and all this. But these guys all seem to have a big problem with that, for
Well,
some strange reason. And
well,
and I think most
well,
of it's because they're just damn lazy.
yeah, well, the ones at the top are using the mythology of someone's getting something and you're not, right?
Yeah.
They're dividing. They're black people and then brown people are getting something and you're not getting those things, and part of that's true because the white people haven't figured out what they're supposed to be doing to get the benefits. I
Oh,
swear,
well, that's
worldwide,
true too. But
they don't know
on the
what to
other,
do.
but
Well, they need to be told what to do in terms of getting stuff. That's
right,
one problem. Right.
right.
Yeah.
But they
Right.
but they sit there and um, it's they all complain about how black people and Hispanics and whatever are taking their jobs away from them too.
Yeah.
That's another thing. And quite honestly, a lot of the jobs, like for instance, that the immigrants, from Mexico and what have you take, are jobs that white people wouldn't take in the first place.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and that
Right.
and by the way, when Gail and I went down to Costa Rica for our honeymoon, okay, one of the things I learned was that they do a lot of coffee. They have a lot of coffee farms and plantations down there. Okay, so they do a lot of coffee. And by the way, it's very good coffee. And, but the interesting thing was that these people said that the Costa Ricans themselves don't want to work on the farms.
Right.
So what they have to do is they bring in people from Nicaragua and Panama to do the work on the farms.
All over the world forever. This has been going on, and this is what we were built. This is what we were built on. The United States was built on, bring your, bring us your tired, what, and all that. It's like so they can work here
Yeah, yeah,
and bolster our economy, so they can
yeah,
work come here and be free and bolster our economy, sort of free. It's
yeah.
what the Republicans fear because they've always they kept like Medicare for all. Okay, it's not that big of a deal, And but when you have people on private insurance through their employer, there's a leash. There's a leash on them, that that they can't move unless they have that good insurance, you know. And
Yeah.
if we have Medicare for all, which post Trump I'm hoping will be the case, all right. So these white people won't feel so left out.
They don't know the benefit that they're getting from that too with Medicare for all.
They don't know that but it's not just to be clear, it's not that brown and black people are getting the Medicare because they're not either getting the Medicare for all yet.
Yeah,
But if they had
yeah.
Medicare
It's
for
an A.
all,
Yeah.
well, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure the rural whites don't think that the other people are getting those things and they're not. So what we need to
Oh,
do,
they probably. Then unfortunately, they probably are. And they don't realize is that to get Medicare, you got to be old
yeah,
right now. Okay,
right,
to get Medicaid, you got to be poor. Okay,
right,
and believe me on this, there's a lot of poor white folk out there who get Medicaid, and in particularly in the rural areas, And in fact, it's kind of funny. In a lot of the areas that supported Trump, okay, his support, the people who supported him, who voted for him, are on
yes,
Medicaid. Okay, and they're going out there and they're thinking that oh, Donald Trump's going to save the world or what have you, which is far from the truth. But here's the thing: what they don't realize is that Medicare for all, will actually save them money
yes,
because because I'm looking at it. Okay, I'm on Medicare, all right, and believe me, my premiums are not high at all. My deductibles are not high. My out of pocket is non-existent.
yeah,
And that it's a great program, and
yeah,
and I have to have a supplemental, and I do that. Okay, and so I'm paying probably half in the premiums that we used to pay, between Gail and myself, and everything. But everything else is all covered, and that
right,
and that. But then you compare it to what I was paying when I was working for a living, okay,
yeah,
and I was paying double the premium, easily.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. On top of that, I had a huge deductible, but even worse is I had a huge out of pocket.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
and
the
that and it's just
ultimate
ridiculous.
problem with so-called Obamacare is that you buy this privately on the marketplace, but you've got a huge deductible, and you've got some the copays. You had access to independent insurance, okay, but you still were kind of screwed because you really you had to
Oh
spend a lot
yeah,
of money
I
before things would kick in.
yeah, I
You
remember
know.
that when I was a contract project manager, I didn't get benefits from the company I worked for because they didn't offer them, and I was okay with that, on that. But in order to get market-based insurance, which is what Obamacare really is, I I remember starting out where I think it was like 2012, I believe it was, and I was paying somewhere around $600 or $700 a month for both Gail and myself.
Uh huh.
2 or 3 years later, it doubled, and then they were going to do it again. And fortunately, I found a company that I could contract through that offered benefits and everything, which lowered my premium bill quite a bit. But the point is who the hell can sit there and afford 12, 13, 14, $1,500 a month
I'm having a.
for as a premium?
Yeah, yeah. I'm having a flashback here, sort of on topic but off topic, and that a little bit of our history, personal history, and we're coming up on the anniversary. October 1st, 2013 was the launch of the ACA website. Do you remember what we were doing?
Wait a minute. What year was that again? I'm sorry. Say that again.
October 1st, 2013 was the launch of the ACA website.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember what we were doing?
What were we
I was at
doing?
Barnes and Noble in Chesterfield, Missouri, and we were testing. We went out and tested the website because we both
Oh
knew
yes, yes,
that
yes.
basically
Oh
it
yes.
was a
And you and
website
I had a
designed.
conversation about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
So
I
we were
remember
logging
that.
in, trying to use it, and it was crashing and burning all over the place
Yep.
because basically it was designed by a bunch of lawyers, and then who gave. I don't know why they never understood the extent at that time, the extent to which they needed to be able to take that many logins. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
and
you remember?
their email responses were out of sync. They'd send you an email. It's like what?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, there was at the time I recall there were probably a bunch of lawyers involved who should not have been involved. Okay.
right.
And that but the other thing was that there were numerous project managers, and there was not one of them who was over all of the project managers. And that
Huh.
this came out in numerous project management publications. And when I and I remember looking at it before that, and I'm like going, Jesus Christ, who the hell's the main project manager for this? Who's the program manager for this? And because you and I haven't been in project management and everything, we understood
Yeah,
how it was supposed to work, and it
and
wasn't working that way.
and how
And
and
I,
how logging into a database, establishing an account, and populating it with your personal information in order to everything to fit in. Now, here's the funny thing. And Medicare has been working like a champ for ages.
yeah, yeah. So why didn't you just mimic that?
Yeah,
Geez, it would have been
or,
just that simple.
or fight
God,
harder for Medicare for all.
yeah,
This is the yeah, but always middlemen involved in some way. You know, contractors looking to build a new system. We need to build a new system for this. Definitely. It's like I believe I'm going off a deep end here a little bit. Maybe I'm assuming too much, but it seems like you could have flagged these new accounts as not eligible for the 65 and over uh,
exactly.
Medicare.
You could have built the same system, or built just changed a few things in the Medicare system itself, okay, to indicate the fact that these folks were on Obamacare,
Yeah,
versus
right.
Medicare, okay,
Yeah,
and all that. So hey, well, there's a few other areas here that we should mention that this Project 2025 does and what the Republicans are trying to do to make it worse for you. We mentioned the election system manipulation in the sense that um, they Pam Bondi, has sent out a letter to all of the Secretary of States of the various states demanding their voter
Ah,
registration lists.
I had
And of
not
course,
followed that. I had
it,
not followed it, but yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they basically there's been, I believe there's about roughly 40 of the 50 states that have basically said no. From what I understand, and good for them, because
Yeah, 40
you
sounds,
get down
40
to it, that's private information.
well, and 40 sounds like there's a few Republican secretaries of state.
Yes, there is. And we're all
Yeah,
wondering why. Well, hey, you got what's his name? The guy from Georgia, okay, who's never been quite a friend of Trump anyway, and all that. And he's basically told him, no, we're not going to give it to you, and
right.
that, right, and that, and so uh, you know, um, uh, so we got that going on, and you have to wonder, okay, like I was saying
Yeah,
earlier, they want to try to implement this Project 2025 like immediately. They know they got a limited amount of time because people are not going to buy what it is that they're trying to do, what it is they're selling at
right.
all. So, what's the one thing that they fear, which is why they're trying to do this so quickly? They know that in 2026, once people start, are realizing, and it will come to a head about, before that election, okay,
Uh-huh.
and so they realize that people, are basically going to, turn control of Congress over to the Democrats. Okay,
Yeah.
because they're not going to be happy with what's going on over here, with them. And so what do you do to try to blunt that?
Well,
Okay,
you know,
and
if you
um,
have the Senate, if you have the Senate, we can talk impeachment. But if we don't
yes,
have the Senate,
well, yeah. If we grab a hold of Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, but basically
uh-huh.
what we're going to need is a veto-proof Congress, because Congress is going to be able to not only start to overturn a lot of the things that Trump is trying to do, okay, they're also going to make it so that the Supreme Court, which Congress has the power to do by the Constitution,
Right?
they're going to make it so that the Supreme Court is limited as to what they can hear. Because
Yes.
Congress can do that, and they're not going to be happy with that because right now, what does Donald Trump do every time the lower courts, or Congress or what have you,
It was his Project
denies
2020.
him to something?
Yeah, his Project 2025 Unitary Supreme Court
Yeah, yeah. He
sycophant.
runs to the Supreme. He runs to the Supreme Court because he says, "Well, I got my buddies in the Supreme Court, and now, mind you, the Supreme Court, while they've done a bunch of things in favor of Trump, they've also done a bunch of things that weren't in favor of Trump, and that. So what you do is you go out and you manipulate the election system by gerrymandering. And you can accuse the Democrats, by the way, of gerrymandering. I mean, Illinois, they do a really awesome job of gerrymandering, and that. I'm myself am not in favor of that. I'm in favor of drawing maps that make sense. Okay, what did you call it? I think you called that spider thing or whatever, something
Yeah,
like that.
I
Yeah,
don't think, and I think they stopped talking about it because uh, I think Pritzker probably is still behind the scenes. We can't get another one out.
yeah.
Illinois, its geography doesn't allow for another Democratic district without it looking like yeah, like without making all of them look like spaghetti coming out of the loop.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah, uh, yeah. Well, Rich, I think we're coming up here.
yeah, yeah, we are. We've been at this for almost 40 minutes now, and
Yeah.
just so folks know too, by the way,
Well,
real quick,
this is long.
real quick here. There are other conspiracies that are going around out there. I'm not quite sure who's spreading these particular conspiracies, but there's the Charlie's not dead theories, okay, which I find interesting, and and they say that they claim that the live stream shooting was staged or CGI. I'm not sure what CGI means.
Well, computer generated. image.
Computer generated image. Okay, yeah, yeah.
You're
An
happy.
AI generated thing. Yeah, really, because
Yeah,
they
you
they
just you just have a
the
great part.
and by the way, maybe it's possible because there are some theories. The second one was that allegations Kirk used blood capsules and hand signals to fake his death. Well, there are some people out there that are saying the same thing about when Donald Trump got shot on that stage.
Yeah,
Because the thing I noticed, the difference between when Charlie Kirk got shot and when Trump supposedly got shot.
yeah,
Now, unfortunately, there was one guy who died, in that first assassination attempt of Trump. But I keep looking at the pictures, and you see Trump, all that kind of happy horse shit. But you see all these people behind him, and they're not moving. But yet in Charlie Kirk's, man, these people just took off
yeah,
like that. They were like going, "Hey, I'm getting the hell out of here,"
yeah, yeah,
which is a normal response, in my opinion. You know,
yeah. Oh
but the
yeah.
ones at Trump's first attempt, they all sat there. Like, really? Why are you sitting there? I mean, and it was more than one shot. And Charlie Kirk said took one shot and everybody got out of there.
One man died, right? One man died as a result.
Yeah,
There was a
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
So
that,
the
so then we got well, and then I was also amazed at how quickly his ear healed because
yes,
the type of bullet he used would have ripped the shit out of his ear,
yeah, yeah,
and all that, and it don't look like it even touched him.
right.
And now the other one was that they got wrong shooter. This is the AI enhanced images,
Ah,
and that the
yes.
viral
Oh,
comparisons between manipulated photos and mugshots, and that, and then of course they're accusing the FBI of hiding the real assassin, and then there's the anti-Israel and Epstein linked theories out there. That's an interesting one. They said Candace Owens alleging pressure
oh,
from
yeah.
Israeli figures to silence Kirk. Who's Candace Owens? Do you know
This is
her?
that American lady who I don't know why she's doing the shit she does. Okay. Uh,
Well, I don't
I,
know why most of that shit's going on that they're doing.
yeah. Or maybe she's not. No, this
Yeah.
is not Carolina. Oh,
So
maybe I'm
so
right.
that's
Yeah.
so that's basically it in a nutshell. When you get down to it, these are the things that are going on. The misinformation, the
It's,
conspiracy theories, blaming the
she,
Democrats for everything. Go ahead.
Candace Owens is being sued by the Macrons, the French prime minister,
Oh,
uh, because saying all kinds of stuff about how his wife is actually a man, or just insane things. His wife is
yeah.
older than him, which I say three cheers. And yeah, so yeah, Candace Owens. I don't know why she does the stuff that she does, and
Yeah.
I think that of any African American who's with the Republican Party, I don't know why they are doing that.
Yeah.
They
So
raised
so
their
for all yeah, so for all intents and purposes, we really don't know the real truth yet about why this guy shot Charlie Kirk. Now, keep in mind they're claiming he was becoming a leftist because he lived with a transgendered guy, a guy who's transgendering over to being a woman,
right.
and all this. Now, it could very well be that the guy was pissed off at Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk doesn't believe in LGBTQ rights, and transgender
Yeah,
people and all this sort of stuff. So it very well could be a personal thing, and the guy was just pissed off at Charlie Kirk and said, "Hey, screw you, pal," boom,
yeah,
and that kind of thing. That very well could be. Ultimately the one in the end, and all this. But in the meantime, the point we really have to make here is the fact that the radical conservatives were so damn quick at blaming, the leftists, and the liberals and all that. It was their fault. We're the violent ones. And it's like, really? I don't think
yeah.
so. But
Statistically, sure, and they stopped classifying that at the FBI or someplace. They've stopped classifying, the assassination attempts in terms of where they're coming from, what
yeah.
terrorist organization
Oh
they're
yeah,
coming.
yeah. No. Those
So,
people have all been reassigned, I think, to being, for immigrant control.
there was something that. Oh yeah. Well, the big thing is I think it was a legit assassination attempt or murder attempt by this young man. As far as I'm concerned, because it doesn't matter. Because and Charlie Kirk is dead. But the thing is that, and this wasn't part of the plan, but it's a great diversion from Epstein.
Yeah.
It's a great
Yeah.
because they take advantage of everything, and this is oh we can do all this and focus on this and how they're violent, but it was and all to not talk about Epstein and not deal with the release of the Epstein files, the balance of the Epstein files. You know,
Yeah.
that's
So
yeah,
so you look at this, and it seems to me, and some people are going to call me crazy, but that's okay. Uh, and because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, they're going through all of this trouble to blame everything on the immigrants, to blame everything on the Democrats. Charlie Kirk gets killed. Okay, that we pay no attention to the Democrats who got killed up in Minnesota,
right,
nor do we pay any attention to the school kids that got shot at and killed in Colorado. And all this, but let me finish. The point is that okay, we've got the immigrants. We've got Charlie Kirk over here, and that we've got the Ukraine. We've got him blowing up ships down in the Caribbean, fishing boats down in the Caribbean. So all of this is a diversion to have us not pay attention to Epstein, which I think Epstein is a diversion, or distraction. We'll call it that. We'll call it a distraction from all the other crap that they're doing behind the scenes that are benefiting them that they don't
right,
want us to know about.
right. Uh, yeah. In many ways, he's following the post, let's call it the post Weimar politics prior to before United Nations forces conquered Germany, and that the politics inside there, again, there were the territories that the German leader wanted to take, which was preeminently well to remilitarize certain areas. Austria, which is our Canada, okay, Austria is because same language,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
oh
let's
yeah.
go out and then
They're really
the Green.
Americans up there. They just don't realize it.
Greenland is like perhaps the Saar district, which coal mining district, which had been separated off from Germany after the First World War. So that was kind of because that's all it had was coal, and it was a very small district. And that's kind of like the Greenland issue. What else does he throw? Oh, Panama. Panama. He's got to put that to the side, though. That's interesting. You don't hear about that at all. But we had that was part of, I'll say, the Nazi plan was to reoccupy certain areas, take certain areas back, or something that needed to be made as one.
Right.
And so and both those were distractions, but part of the program. He probably still thinks that they should be and. And then everything else that's happened the assassinations, the assassination attempts, the murders, the curtailing of rights, all of that. I'm wondering
Yeah.
if the
And thanks for some.
Canadian Broadcasting Corporation would pick up Jimmy and pick up Colbert, okay,
Which
and
one?
stream
Which one? Which one?
Canadian Broadcasting
Oh
Corporation
yeah, yeah, yeah. That would
would
be
pick
great.
up would pick up Kimmel, would pick up Colbert, and live and stream them, and stream them on on the
Oh,
web.
if PBS or NPR. I mean, my God, you don't look at. Hey, you know something? They could probably get enough in the way of subscriptions and donations to them that it wouldn't matter that the government cut their funds that if they put those guys on.
Well, and they could feasibly make it for profit
Yeah,
and get Europe, especially Europe, to invest in it. Okay, there's a tripwire there, but there's a risk there. But we only need it for a little while.
yeah. Well, and the thing is
Yeah,
too, yeah, yeah, and you're correct. And the thing is too is that the only thing making them not for profit, for PBS and that, is the fact that they were getting government money.
right. Yeah,
Otherwise, yeah, now they're free of that because they're not getting it. What the hell? Let's become for profit, and go from there, and bring on Kimmel
yeah,
and bring on Colbert and Stewart and all these other guys. So
and get foreign investors to prop it up. to
Yes.
get the proper.
So
Yeah.
with that, I believe we've we've run out of time. Been a fantastic conversation, and that today, Tim. Thank you very much. And that so, folks, we bid you farewell until the next episode.
Bye bye.